So good morning, students. Now in this lecture we'll study about the power in AC. Of course, we will also study the power factor and choke coil as well. These are in perspective to what is in your NCRT course and IIT JEE, of course. And also NEET. Okay. Now, when I talk about power in AC, we know, from whatever electricity we have studied that power is nothing but VI. V is equal to V naught sine omega t in AC perspective, and I is equal to I naught sine omega t plus phi. Okay, so here in AC both V and I varies actually with time, right? So at any point we can say instant power is nothing but Vt into It. And if I talk about the power at that instance, it is nothing but V naught sine omega t into I naught sine omega t plus phi at any instance. So I can say at any instance. Okay. Now the other concept which you should remember is the power average. Power average. So whenever they don't refer power and they just ask you to find the power, that means they are referring to power average. Now power average is nothing, as you know, it is an average of power throughout, correct? Or as we have done earlier, it can also be said this. Okay, now further if I have to put it, I can put it as V naught sine omega t, okay, and I naught sine omega t plus phi. Okay, this is voltage, this is current, correct, and the average of the same, correct. Further I can say V naught I naught, and I can say sine omega t and sine omega t plus phi, and I can write it like this. But we know V naught and I naught is constant, correct? But before that, let me expand this with whatever we have studied. So if I expand it, it becomes V naught I naught, and then sine square omega t cos phi plus 2 sine omega t, cos omega t sine phi by 2, correct, and the average of that. Okay, further, so what I've done is I've just expanded it, I've just expanded it, right? Expanded and then multiplied, right? Okay. Further, I can say V naught I naught, and then I can say if I multiply this, I can write it. This 2 and this 2 cancels, this 2 and this 2 cancels, so I can write it sine square omega t cos phi plus sine 2 omega t, correct. Why? Because sine a cos a, 2 sine a cos a is nothing but sine 2a. If I have to write it, let me use this pen and write it like sine 2a is equal to 2 sine a cos a. Okay, so this is cos 2 omega t and then sine phi by 2, correct. Okay, here, sorry, yeah, here it will, I can after making this, I can just close the bracket because it's done. We have just moved this, use this formula and just converted it. Okay, average of this. Okay, now further I can write V naught I naught. Now V naught I naught and separately, okay, and I can say sine square omega t cos phi, average of this, separately, I have put in separately, plus sine square, sine, sorry, not square, 2 omega t, you know, average of this, sine phi, average of this, and divide by 2 and close the bracket, right? Or now remember the average of v naught I naught remains as it is. So v naught I naught, this average is v naught I naught only. So I've just put in v naught I naught, okay, and this is this sine square omega t. So if I just write it, you know, these all things, then I say sine square omega t average we have already done is nothing but 1 by 2. Okay, now cos phi average is cos phi because constant, it's a constant. Okay, now sine 2 omega t, average of anything sine is 0, correct? Similarly, average of cos omega t is equal to sine omega t is also 0. Anything of sine, this and this is 0. Okay, just remember these formulas. So I can write now this is 1 half cos phi remains as cos phi, correct, plus sine 2 omega t, as I said, is 0, so this whole becomes 0. Okay, now this can be said as, you know, v naught I naught cos phi by 2, and also, you know, remember the other way of doing the same thing was, you know, p average. If we have to find p average, let me write it. P average is equal to integration of p dt integration of dt, correct, from t to 0, t to 0. Similarly, if I have to find I average is equal to integration of I dt by integration of dt. So this you have to remember, okay? So in the earlier slide, we proved that P average is equal to V naught I naught cos phi by 2. Further, I can write it like, you know, V naught by root 2 into I naught by root 2 and then cos phi, correct? Or I can write it P average is equal to V RMS into I RMS cos phi, okay? Okay, so basically this is the formula of average power. So I told you about instantaneous power, but average power is actually VRMS IRMS into cos phi. Now what is phi? This is nothing but phase difference, okay, and this is phase difference is nothing, this is called, this I can say is called power factor as well. Power factor. Okay, so in a AC current, if it would have been a DC current, it was just V into I. But in case of AC, basically it depends on the phase difference as well. What is the lag or lead between the current and voltage, and cos phi, it depends on cos phi, which is phi is phase difference and cos phi is called as power factor. So now if we talk about various circuits, what would be the phi and what would be power factor, let's quickly analyze. So if I take this circuits, and this is phi and this is power factor, which is, what is power factor? Power factor is nothing but cos phi. Okay, now in this, if let's take this, so we have what, a normal resistor, we have voltage in the same phase, current in the same phase. What is the phase difference? Phase difference is 0. Cos 0 is 1, right? If I talk, so this is 1, let's say A. Now if I talk about B, if I talk about B, then there is one called inductor. Okay, let's talk about that. So in inductor we know V and I, V and I. Okay, angle is 90 degree, so cos 90 is 0. So there is no average power, average power, there in an inductor circuit, because half of the circuit it is positive and another half it is negative, so both gets nullified, right? Now if I talk about capacitor, if I talk about capacitor, again there the lag is again 90 degree. V cos 90, angle is 90, and again it is 0. Okay, so this needs to be remember. Now going forward we will talk about various combinations like LR circuit, and then CR circuit and so on. So okay,